Thanks everybody for taking the time to join us this afternoon. I'm Paul Bushell with UnForm, and we're going to step through some of our various tools that we use to help automate business processes. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to kind of step through some ways to help on the accounts payable end of the business, and then Brian's going to show us how to bring customer purchase orders in and minimize, the whole data entry process required to do those things. So I'm sure a lot of you out there are probably familiar with us in our print management solution, but we do have, an entire end-to-end document management solution that not only includes the ability to generate, professional forms and reports and have those emailed or faxed or of course printed, but we also have a full document management and DocFlow routing applications as well. So what we're going to focus on today is Image Manager. We're going to talk a little bit about Archive and DocFlow, and then how we can use those tools to automate different business processes, to be able to actually capture vendor invoices as they come in via email or as scans, extract the data from that document, format it as either flat file or a BOD, and push that over to the accounts payable process, so that you're not having to spend your day keying all that data. You're just managing the documents that need some intervention, rather than just the routine documents that should just be able to flow through. Image Manager is what, again, is going to be kind of the primary focus today. It is completely browser-based, so you can install UnForm either in the cloud or on-premise, wherever you want to. All the work's done on the server side, so you don't have to do any installations on people's workstations for them to be able to do their job. The focus of Image Manager is automation. So there are ways to fully index and transfer documents directly into our archive and into IDM. You can place documents into DocFlows for routings and approvals and things like that. And then we can actually take data from documents that come into the business and format it as electronic transactions to help automate the data entry process of that. So today we're going to take a look at how we automate the capture and indexing of documents, how we can route invoices based on what type of invoice and where they need to go. And then we're going to take a look at, again, the automation of inbound customer purchase orders, so that as your customers send you POs, you can get them into the system very quickly, easily, and accurately, and get them moving along. So that is the extent of the PowerPoint today. So what we're looking at today, this is the UnForm server, again, completely browser-based, and you can see the various applications. Today we're going to focus on Image Manager and DocFlow. So I think the kind of the first step in automating processes for us is the ability to monitor what we call inbound sources. So an inbound source is it's where is the document coming from. So it can be a directory. So documents are either scanned or you drag and drop them into a specific directory, and then that inbound source is configured to perform whatever task is appropriate for the documents that you're putting there. And it can also be an email address. So as documents come to an email address, we can pick them up, take the attachments off of them, and again, configure based on that particular email address the appropriate actions that need to take place on those documents as they come in to the system. So again, monitored inbound sources, pick up the documents, and as they come in, whether it's email, scan, or you're dragging and drop them, it's going to bring them into Image Manager. So with inbound vendor invoices, as they come into the system, we're going to pick those documents up based on what we call a job definition. Let me move this out of the way. We are going to identify who sent us that invoice, and then what we need to do to process that invoice, and either excuse me, get it completely indexed and into the archive or IDM. Or if we want to extract the data from it, we can do that as well for formatting as either a BOD or an EDI-in file. And you'll see here, as these documents came in, I've got several that have check marks. I've got one that doesn't. The ones that have check marks, as they came in, we were able to actually identify that particular invoice, and then based on the way that invoice looks, we know where to look for the key data elements that we need to index it, and of course get the information off of it to create a transaction. A couple things to note. One is what we see today typically more and more is that documents like these that come in are usually PDFs with a text layer on them. In that instance, we're actually able to read the text off of this document directly from that PDF. So we're just reading the text data straight off of that document, so we can get that data off of there accurately, 100% of the time. If it is an image and requires optical character recognition, there's an OCR engine that comes along with it that will run OCR against the document and extract that data. And we've got a couple different levels of OCR that we can apply depending on the quality of the document. So if they're pretty good quality, we just run it through the internal OCR engine, but we also have the ability, if we need to run it through the Amazon has a OCR process too. We can run it through that and get the data off of those as accurately as possible. But as we extract that data, we're also doing other things with it. So we can run what we call validations against it. So we can, as a vendor invoice comes in, for example, we can validate that the purchase order number and that vendor number actually exist in your system, so that we know, it's a valid PO vendor combination. We can also validate other things as well. You can do a lot of different things with it. In this example, we've determined that this one's actually a duplicate document. So if you look back here real quick, if I hover over here, it's going to say this is a duplicate document. That's why it doesn't have a check mark. So I can come in, review the document, determine if it is in fact a duplicate invoice or not, and take whatever corrective action is necessary. And you'll see too from here, we're also running through, we're pulling all that line item detail off of there, so that we've captured all that line detail, so that we can then format it based on whatever the target ERP is. So either a BOD, an EDI-in file, or whatever particular format is needed by the ERP that's coming in. We also, in a lot of cases, we'll see vendors that are sending a single PDF that has multiple invoices in it. And as those come in, we can automatically split them up, so that you're not having to do any kind of processing ahead of time. When we've detected that the invoice number changes, we simply start a new document and bring that in. So as they come in, we're reading the data, determining who sent us that document, and then from there we are extracting whatever information is necessary based on that particular document. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to just pick a few of these here. Excuse me. And we'll come over here, and I'm going to finish these up. So these have been set up to extract the data from the document, and then once we finish the process, it's going to create the BOD required by Cloud Suite to go into AP Invoice Center. So I'm going to select those, and I'm going to say, yep, these are good to go. Now, typically, we'd have the full automation turned on, so anything with a check mark on it, you typically wouldn't have to even look at in the image manager. Just process through, and you'd only review the exceptions that are in there. So we've done that. Now, if we come over here and take a quick look in, here, you'll see it pushed my documents into APECE. So these are in the AP Invoice Center, ready to go. And again, based on how you've configured your options within here, if they're within tolerance, they can just flow through and schedule a payment for that vendor. Anything that's out of balance, of course, is going to be held up in here for review and whatever actions necessary from it. And then we're also, at the same time we've pushed the data over, we're also pushing those documents into the archive. So if I come in here, you have the ability to add this UnForm Web Extension. So from there, if I click the UnForm button here, I have the ability to actually come in here. It'll open up UnForm, our archive, and then from here I can view all of those documents, or all the documents related to that particular transaction. So in this example, I can pull up all the documents that I'd need to review if there was some issue with the three-way match. So we can push them directly into our archive, and we can also push them over into IDM as well. Brian's going to show you that in just a minute. So again, that's, invoices coming in. If we take a look back here, let me if we come back over into the image manager, you also, of course, can create job definitions for other document types as well. Packing slips, you want to have those in there so that when you do have three-way match issues, you have all the documents you need in there. So, a lot of times with packing slips, they're not always the best handled document that you see throughout the day. They've come through, with the truck driver and then through the warehouse. But from here, this is a pretty simple job we call a prompt job. So it's just going to ask me for the PO number on this document. I can grab the PO number, and then we have the ability to actually go pull additional information from Cloud Suite when this document's finished, so that it goes in and it's indexed as well. Vendor acknowledgements are another good document to set up and bring in. We can actually, not only get those indexed into the system, so you have them to view as needed, but you can also extract the data and push that transaction into the transaction control center as well. One more quick note here too on invoices, and part of the, another big piece of the automation is the ability to route those invoices as needed. And typically what we see there's different flows depending on what your process is, and also could be different based on whatever particular ERP you're using. But this one's kind of a typical one that we see with customers as far as expense type invoices go. So all those overhead invoices for, power and telephone and all those other kinds of things. This is an example of a DocFlow that's set up based on a dollar value of the invoice. I'm logged in as an administrator, so I see all the different levels here, but this is a fairly straightforward one. A branch manager can approve up to $300. So as the invoice comes in, he'd be alerted via email that he has a document to approve. He has the ability to come in here, and then he can add additional notes and attachments here if he needs to, and then can select whatever the next step in that is. If everything looks good, they can go ahead and approve it, put a GL number there if they need to assign a GL account to it, save it, and then move it on. And you'll see when it hits approved, it will alert the next role in that particular flow. So in this case, it's going to alert accounting that invoice has been approved and it's ready to be entered into the system. It's kind of a little different. This is an example of a trade invoice in what we see with, of course, with SX and with Cloud Suite is the AP Invoice Center does the three-way match for you. So as long as everything adds up, everything matches up, there's no reason for it to really go through a DocFlow. It's already good to go. But if in fact that three-way match should fail, you can add those documents to a DocFlow, route them back to the buyer or wherever it needs to go, along with the other documents that they need to review. So you can send them the PO, the packing slip, and the invoice. They have the ability, again, to come in and add additional documents or notes as needed, and then from there, they simply either approve it, deny it, or whatever they need to do to get that moving along. And again, these flows are all configurable based on your particular process. So whatever your business rules are, that's the way that these flows can be put together. I think at this point, Gloria, we'd like to put up one of the polling questions, if we could. So this one is, are you currently using any automation techniques to import transactions to minimize manual entry and increase accuracy? So the options are no processes are automated, 1 to 2 processes automated, 3 to 4 processes are automated, or more than 4. So we'll give people just a minute or two to pop those in there. And let's see. So we've got the results in. So no processes are automated. That's 67% of the folks attending have not automated any processes. We've got 8% that have 1 to 2, 25% 3 to 4, and nobody yet has more than 4 processes automated. So thanks. Let's tell you what we're going to do now is move on, and so that is that's some of the options within accounts payable. You can bring the documents in, get them indexed automatically. You can also use those same job definitions to generate the to extract the data from the document and generate the appropriate type of transaction to get the data entry piece automated. So whether you're doing existing EDI today or not. I mean, if you're doing EDI already, it's a great way to get those vendors into that same kind of flow that don't have the ability to do EDI. And again, your folks, the vendors don't even need to know what you're doing. It's transparent to them. They just continue doing whatever it is they were doing. So that was everything I was going to step through for accounts payable side today. So what I want to do now is turn it over to Brian so he can step us through the order entry side.
Let me grab this here, Paul. All right. What I'm going to show is the order entry side, and it takes a lot of what Paul just went through. The whole idea is to make it easy for your customers to do business with you. A customer will often send you a purchase order. They might send it via email. They might fax it to you. They might send it postal mail, and somehow you'll end up with a purchase order file. In this case, what you're looking at here is a sample purchase order that a customer may have emailed me, and I saved it off to a file location. Using UnForm, we can either have a file location that we put these in, or it could be an email box. It could be as simple as sales or orders at mycompany.com, and customers basically send orders there. So what we do, and I'll show you an example, what we're going to do is we're going to take this purchase order, we're going to put it into Image Manager. It's going to run a job definition that's going to determine, okay, what customer this is. It will go create the appropriate data stream. In this case, we're using Cloud Suite, so this is the latest and greatest. There was a question before in the chat as to can this work with earlier versions of SX? The answer is yes. It's just it uses a little different format for how it gets the data into SX, but this can work with earlier versions of 11 and even some of the 6 versions of SX. But the data then will get into SX and it comes in as an order. And let me show you an example of that. So I've got my PO 3507 here. I'm just going to grab that and I'm going to drop that into my Unform file location here, and I had one sitting there. So you see it disappears out of my file location. And if I go to Image Manager and I go click back in there, we're going to see that it pulled in a document. Now, if you recall what Paul said before, they'll have a checkbox if the document is completely read properly. So if it's a bad scan or if it's missing a certain piece of information, the fields will be read in here, and you can go into the image section here, look at the document, fill out the fields, and send the document onto the system. This process can also be fully automated. So what you'd be looking at here inside of Image Manager would or could only be the documents that didn't have this ready checkbox. In this case, I'm stopping the flow here. So again, we can see what happens. But if you notice, it does scan the PDF file, pulls out the information it needs. And again, I've got a checkbox, so I'm ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that checkbox and I'm going to go, let me pop over here into Cloud Suite for a second, go into Order Inquiry, just to prove that this is all real and live. What I've got is an inquiry here looking for orders created today. So I'm going to let this one go, and it runs the job. Again, this could be fully automated. It reads the customer. From the customer information, it goes and builds that. It's an XML file called a BOD, builds that BOD, sends it up to Cloud Suite, and again, I'm giving it a minute here. It'll process it, and it should create an order. It better create an order. Oh, and there we go. So what that did, and let me open up that order. You remember it was PO 33507. So it created an order. The order is going to have my line items on it. And however, I've got the customer configured. You might allow non-stocks, you might not allow non-stocks, all of that kind of stuff. That's configurable on a customer basis. But in this case, it creates my order in the system, and away I go. I can set, and in this case, I've got my job set here in Cloud Suite where I'm bringing in these documents with a certain approval type. So I can also control how that document goes into the system. Some customers just say, okay, an order comes in, I just want it to go into the system as an order and I don't want to touch it. Other customers say, I want an order to come in, but I want it on some sort of hold code so somebody can go review these orders, make sure they're what we want them to be, approve them, and then move on. The third way we can do it is an order can come into the system as a quote, where someone again then goes and reviews the quotes and converts the quote to an order and moves it on through the system. So in this case, I have this one set up to set a special approval type. And again, this is just arbitrarily chosen as a W. But I can go, again, look at those orders out there with a W hold code and someone can approve them and move them to the system. The other piece to this is Paul had mentioned Infor document management. One of the things we're doing too, when we pull that document into the system, we are, and it should show here, it didn't draw completely there. We are also pulling the document into Infor document management. So in addition to it being in the archive, like Paul showed, the UnForm archive, we have the ability to put these documents in document management as well. So in some cases, I think this is a little easier just to see, okay, here's what the real order looks like. You know, here's how it looks in the system. And if I have a question on it, I can just literally click on it and it comes up on the screen and I can see it without having to go outside of the application. So what I'm going to do is again, one more example here just to show that again. So I have a second purchase order here, 508. This has a single item, 2 hammers. Company's ordering 2 hammers on it. So I'm going to take, again, I'm going to close this out. I'm going to take my my sample file here, drop it in. Again, like I said, this could go to an email address, or you might have a scan to file location off of your multifunction copy or something like that. I'm going to flip over here to Image Manager. I'm going to refresh my screen. Oh, look at that. Again, it pulled it in. It's got the ready checkbox. Again, if I wanted to look at it, I can click on the image here. You see it's my one line item, 2 hammers to be ordered. I'm going to say, okay, let's pass that through. So I pass it through. It says, are you ready to go? And it's going to send it through. Again, UnForm's going to process it, extract the data out of it, send it to, again, that thing called a BOD, which then sends it up to Cloud Suite. So back to my order inquiry. If you remember, I had 1 document. It should create a 667. Yep, it creates a 667. Likewise, I go into it. If I want to see what it looks like in document management, oops, it's still got the 668 there. Let's refresh the screen. Sometimes you find IDM doesn't always keep up. And there's a 508. So that's the document. If I wanted to see what it looked like, again, I can certainly open it up. There's my 2 hammers. Go into my line detail. And again, you will see that it's created an order with 2 of those hammer items on it, and it's ready to go, ready to process. Again, the whole gist here is this is increasing accuracy. It's saving time, and people you end up dealing with exceptions then instead of keying everything in and taking a whole bunch of time. It's a good, I'm not going to say it's a replacement for EDI, but it's a good complement for EDI. You might not want to go through the trouble and expense of setting up EDI for a customer, or on your side being the vendor, you might not want to go through it. So typically we say, okay, pick your top 5 customers that again you're not doing EDI with, and let's map the documents and move it forward into here. So with that said, Paul, that's what I have to show.
Okay.
So just take it back and go from there.
So what we want to do now is take some time for some questions and answers. So Christy, I think there was a list of stuff that came in.
There are. We have a handful in the chat and a handful in the question and answer bank. So I'm just going to go ahead and recap a couple of these and ask them out loud so we can answer them audibly.
And Christy, I'm going to just invite Paul and Chris to jump online with you so that everybody can see those who are providing answers. And now I'm going to pop off again.
Great. Thank you, Gloria. So one of the questions that came in is earlier, Paul, when you were presenting, Paul, we are on version 11.19.7 GUI. Will this work with our current version? Also, how can users retrieve documents from this system? So we did have an answer here, so I'll go ahead and read that off. Yes, there's a client app that is installed on the user's computer, and this allows you to pull up the documents in GUI, and it will pop up in a browser window. So anybody have anything else to add to that answer?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is, again, the integration is a little different on the backside. If you're running a hybrid environment, which some people are, some people run 11.19.7 and they run a little web UI and they run a GUI, and you might have the Infor OS piece hosted in the cloud, Infor hosted. If that's the case, we use the XML BODs to get the data there. If it's on-premise and you're just running strictly GUI, we can integrate to the standard SX EDI files, or there's a few more choices to do that, but it absolutely does and can work with on-premise SX.
Yeah, and you always have too, from a retrieval standpoint, you can always use our browser-based retrieval application. So it's very easy to use, very intuitive. So, that's always an option as well.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Another question is, does this work with A+ version 10.03 on the iSeries?
So it's the UnForm runs on either Windows or Linux. So it's not going to run on the iSeries. So, but as far as using it with A+, you absolutely can, sure.
Right. Then another question we have is, will it work on a terminal server environment?
What I was demoing here was actually running on a terminal server. So yes, it's browser based. So the core application will absolutely work on a terminal server, and the web UI components, or I'm sorry, the web UI, the GUI components, again, it's got to be installed on the client, can work on a terminal server. And Chris, I don't know if you've got something to add. You've got more experience with some of that.
The client-based that works with GUI also does work on terminal server. You're able to install that on the terminal server and use that in the terminal server too.
And next question is, do you have a conversion application to migrate from another system such as DocuClass or Max Recall?
Chris?
Yep,
You
Chris.
know that. Yeah. The answer is yes.
We do have, for Max Recall, we do have a process to pull out of Max Recall and bring them into IDM.
Or into the archive.
Or in the UnForm archive.
Yes, sorry,
Yeah.
Into the UnForm archive.
Both, yeah.
Right, perfect. And then next question is, do the workflows for mapping orders into SX work well with GUI?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it does. I mean, you're going to be working in the UnForm application on the DocFlow piece of it, but then once an invoice is approved, it will release that. Whether you're using the bot or the EDI 810i file, it will release it after the approval. So.
Yeah, and I was going to add to that, Paul, that if you do document mappings and things like that in UnForm, and you're using, again, an older version of SX, the GUI, or whatever, once you get the document mapped, it's just a matter of changing the backend data flow as to where it goes. So it's not a lost exercise, if that makes any sense. So if you've got an older version and you've got customers that send you purchase orders or invoices or whatever it is, once those are mapped, it's not a difficult exercise to move it from GUI to web UI. So if you've got older stuff and you're contemplating an upgrade, the work that you do is not lost going to that upgrade. It's not like, oh, I got to throw it all out and do it all over again.
Yep.
Correct. I think the follow-up was they use flat files only with GUI.
They use flat file. Yeah, the challenge with Cloud Suite distribution, the cloud stuff, is we can't just send the GUI type flat file that's been there for years and years and years that we send to traditional SX or Trend. Everything with Cloud Suite is an XML document. So we convert the data into that XML document, which is called a BOD, business object document, and we send that to Cloud Suite. So Cloud Suite reads those. It's not just the same type of flat file. Technically, it's a flat file, but the flat file is an XML file.
Okay. I think we have covered all the ones in the Q&A. Another question that had come up earlier in the chat is, what other types of transactions does this work with?
Well, certainly, vendor invoices, customer POs, vendor acknowledgements. We've got a project going now where someone's automating the inbound vendor acknowledgements. And really, it's not limited to those types of documents. You can extract the information from any kind of document and then format it however it needs to be formatted. So, and certainly there's different formats based on different ERPs as well. But really, if there's a transaction import available for a document, then technically we should be able to generate whatever that file format needs to be.
Great. Next question is, are we able to store any document type we would like in the UnForm archive? Absolutely.
So they're not just limited to just ERP related documents. So you can use it for whatever you want. One thing too, I want to make sure I hope everybody realizes this, but the image manager, it's there. You can use it for very simple indexing processes like bar-coded signed proof of deliveries, and you're also using that same tool. You have the same functionality available within Image Manager to be able to extract the invoice information off of there. So you don't have to buy any additional software. So if you want to start out with just some simple archiving type functions with it, you can do that, and then you build onto it as you gain experience with it. So everything you need is in Image Manager to do, the simple all the way up to those fully automated type applications.
Great. So I think we are done with all the questions. We did answer the one, I think it's still open right now, but that we have the conversion thing for DocuClass or Max Recall, and the answer was yes. We have a way to do both of those. We just got another one in. NowDocs has a spool cache folder that backs up all transactions printing through NowDocs and will slate them in their own year, month, day folder scheme. Does UnForm offer something similar?
Yes. So anything that is printed through UnForm is automatically pushed into the UnForm archive. So it's pushed into the archive, and based on shared index information, common index information, those documents are then linked with any other documents that share that same index information, regardless of how or when they come in. So if you print a purchase order into the archive as an invoice comes in, or the packing slip or an acknowledgement comes in that has that PO number on it, whether it's scanned or brought in through an email, it's linked back to that original purchase order that was captured at print. If you are using a different print solution, such as NowDocs, you can certainly, as long as we have access to the documents, you can certainly drop them in a directory for UnForm to pick up and bring into the archive as well.
Great, that looks like that does it for the questions. And I think we covered all the ones that popped up in the chat as well. So we are all set on this side.
So Gloria, I think it's time for us to turn it back over to you.
You, Paul. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to launch any additional poll questions or not, and if you do, just let me know. We have a couple more questions here. Larry Perol says, also, is it definite conversion for DocuClass?
We have not done one. Chris, have you guys done a DocuClass?
We have not, no.
It's certainly, Larry, it's certainly something we can take a look at. If they have an export utility, it shouldn't be a very difficult thing to do.
Okay, wonderful. Well, how's the best way to reach you, Brian, or anyone else here with regard to both of your organizations, Paul?
Well, I just popped up our contact information there. So you can reach me at paulb@synergetic-data.com, and Brian is at brian.jones@nsacom.com. And I also want to make sure everybody's aware too that on our website you do have the ability to all the documentation's there. There are a lot of training videos on the website, and if you want to get an evaluation copy, we do have an evaluation copy available for download on our website.
That's wonderful to know. So if you want to contact either of these gentlemen, I encourage you to go ahead. Now's a great time to snare a screenshot before I take control of the screen again and wrap things up. So give you a moment to do that, and you should be good to go. First of all, let us thank, on behalf of everybody on the panel today, we want to thank everyone who joined us today online. We had 20 participants. This is so great to see so much chatter in terms of not only helpfulness that you provide one another, but the questions that bubble up to the top, because we want to make sure that you always get the answers. Also, I want to say a special thanks to Paul, Brian, Christy, and Chris for being here and taking an in-depth review of this Unform solution. Now, as with most all of our webinars, our content will be available on the website, usually within one business day of the actual live event. So if you want to go back and revisit any of the content, share it with one of your peers, etc., that's where you're going to find it. We keep a very robust archive of all of our webinar content. Now, speaking of webinars, our next webinar will be this Friday, July 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And for those of you who know him, Steve McEnany is a wealth and powerhouse of information, not to mention a valued network leader within TUG. And he's going to be presenting how to create an ION workflow start to finish level 1 presentation. This is a recorded presentation. Place was one of the most popular breakouts that we had during the digital conference this year of TUG Connects 2021. So we're going to be taking not only the recording and breaking it up into bite-sized nuggets, but having pauses for live Q&A with Steve online as well. So make sure that you watch your inbox and also the community forums and go over and register just as quickly as you see it pop in. Now, we'd also like to invite those of you who are members of TUG to continue this conversation on the forums. That is purely 24 karat gold. We also know that Paul, Brian, and their teams also monitor those portals to be helpful to you with regard to providing those solutions to anything that you have and further questions. So for those of you who are not yet TUG members, I say, why not? Jump on over to www.theusergroup.org and join today. You will not regret it. And thanks for joining us again today. And as they say in Hollywood, that's a wrap, folks.